than the poor humanity in the planet. If we look at the data updated to 2024, we'll see that while Qatar issues over 35 tons of CO2 per person a year, many African countries do not reach the 0.1 ton. We do not all pollute in the same manner, but the effects of climate changes are suffered especially by those who have less. And that is a scientific data. We find it on this text, and the Pope says it very clearly with great strength. Another moment of reflection that is important because that text has very important points for reflection. Pope Francis questions the meritocracy when that becomes an excuse to justify privileges. Thinking that I deserve this does not entitle you to exploit resources in an unlimited fashion. We are not outside of the world. We are part of it, and we are connected with everything that is being experienced. The concept of meritocracy, it is one of the pillars of democracy at this time in the richer countries. It justifies the richer persons and the institutions, and it allows them to not see what is happening, to not take care of the earth. Pope Francis, to destroy this concept, says that your responsibility is to understand that you're part of the earth. You are a human being, and as all, it is your responsibility to take care of creation. Here, this is a slide that we almost always show during those courses that shows the toys of the Guaraos, Indian children, and the European toys in any family that is well off. The same target, different way of living since childhood. So, within the same logic, the Pope points out another danger. Those who have more financial resources can feel protected from environmental damage. That's why they do not act, they do not change. But that is just an illusion, as Pope Francis says. Nobody is safe when the common home is destroyed.
Ahora, me gusta, insomma, yo he invitado una amiga, una hermana, que es
I invited
Farida,
a
Margot
friend,
Acevedo
a
Castro.
sister,
Farida,
Margot
¿estás?
Acevedo Castro. Farida, Margot, are you
Hola.
there?
Hola, Farida, ¿qué tal? ¿Todo
Hi,
bien?
Farida.
Sí. Bienvenida, Farida.
Bienvenida.
Welcome, Farida.
Yo voy a interrumpir
Thank you. I'm going to
subdivisión del
stop
externo y te
sharing my
decir,
screen. I will
yo
present,
conocí
I
a
will introduce you.
Farida
I
durante
met
un mes
Farida
atrás y
a
me di
month
cuenta,
ago,
hablando con
and I
Farida, que
realized as
ella
I
es
spoke to
una
her
migrante,
that she is a
pero
migrant,
es una migrante especial,
but she's a
porque no
special
solo
migrant
pasó lo que pasó, que ahora voy
because
a
she not
contar,
she not only
sino una
went
vez
through
que
what
llegó
she
en
did,
otro
which she's
lugar,
going to say now,
empezó
but
a
once she
ayudar
arrived
lo
at a
que,
different place, she
según su propia
started
perspectiva,
helping
son más
what, according
vulnerables,
to her
son
perspective, were
más
more
vulnerables que sí mismos,
more
¿no? Y esa
vulnerable
restitución
than
al
her. This
planeta, a la
restitution
comunidad,
to the
yo creo
planet, to
que
the
hará de Farida una
community,
persona única.
I think that
Y entonces, Farida, por
makes her
favor,
a unique
si
person.
puedes
So,
compartir tu
Farida, if you
experiencia,
can please
tienes más o
share
menos
your
15 minutos.
experience. You have about 15 minutes.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Sí, yo llegué a México
I
en
came
marzo
to
2019.
Mexico in March
Em,
2009. I have a degree in computer science, and I have a master's in project management and digital transformation. I have two daughters. We are here, my family here, just my two daughters. I wanted to share with you that I'm a human rights activist since 2003, since Venezuela. That's one of the reasons why I had to leave Venezuela. I resonated with the word meritocracy, merit-based, when we were talking about do I deserve it or not, because one of the things that we saw in Venezuela, for example, and in fact, the actual embassy of Venezuela told me is that I made a lot of noise for migrant people because they only pursued the 1%. And I told them 1% is persecuted directly. And it's kind of cheeky that you tell me, but 99 is displaced because of the consequences of what you're doing. So a complex humanitarian crisis that often times is displaced by many things that takes away credit from what migrants experience. Even the ambassador of Venezuela here in April she went to the camps with more than 150 refugees and told them that she was not responsible for helping them because it was their fault because they migrated. So that resonated a lot because in the case of Venezuelan migration, I think they want to label the displaced of first category or second category while we're all displaced. I have a mission of life that is to support people to find a place where they feel protected, where they may enjoy their life, to support them with empathy. Trying, because I know it is not possible to be 100% in other people's shoes, but using my own experience because I too am a migrant. I am in a different country with my two daughters. One of the things that I believe helped me build up resilience, because I suffered political, psychological, and financial violence. I had to start from zero, start from scratch on several occasions. What helped me was my education. Thank God I had the opportunity to be educated. That's why I told you at the beginning. And that was a key factor to resist this as I face this situation. The other thing was access to documents. When I arrived, I was allowed to take out my work permit without having a job here and without using an attorney. Now, the situation is very different. The access to a job, although no one gave me a job without the permit, but since I had a work permit, then the companies accepted me. There was no company for a year that gave me a job without me having the permit. The construction of support networks, I'm a faithful believer that together we can achieve greater things. So a person who's isolated with no support network is practically impossible in such a hostile system to overcome all the barriers. Since I've been here, I've engaged in building networks. Another thing is to know the system, the Mexican system. It's complex, and I don't know why in that country the rules change every week. And that is a challenge to help the people, because during one week we give some information and then it changes. The requirements are different. Everything changes. So that makes it very difficult. One of the key issues for a person to be integrated, overcome some barriers, is to know the system, or to find an organization or another person that explains the system. And we began with these challenges. And in 2016, I am the co-founder of a platform called We Are All Venezuela. We're in different countries. And in 2016, the Venezuelans already faced challenges with access to passports. That's our ID abroad. We're not talking about this year, last year, 2016. We already had issues to have access to passports. And we collected signatures. We went to the UN and we knocked on doors and in all the embassies we could, and the European Parliament, to raise awareness. If a person has no access to ID, they fall into a very vulnerable situation, much worse than what was entailed by leaving Venezuela. Then we reported the crimes against the humanity that are being committed in Venezuela. In 2016, we went to the International Court. So it's not something new. So building networks since 2015, I've been participating in the co-foundation of the Entrepreneurs Association from Venezuela. The number of people coming to Mexico from Venezuela was increasing. So we said we have to join forces. And those who had been here for a longer time, who could rely on some resources, we said we have to join forces. We did not yet know what was coming, but we did perceive that the situation was worsening. So we have to join forces. And we began with those who had more resources. Then in 2017, we created the Association of Venezuelans in Mexico. It's called Venemex. I was their first president. And the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela was terrible. What we mostly did was to send food and medications to Venezuela. And then this changed. And the crisis and the vulnerable situation started in Mexico. So we were no longer sending help to Venezuela because the help was required locally in Mexico. The Mexican government in 2022 started requiring a visa from the Venezuelans arriving by airplane. I came by airplane. And that's when the people started increasing. There was an increase of the people walking through the jungle, but that was after Mexico requested visa so that people could leave Venezuela. These are consequences of the actions of the government. In 2022, we began, well, I'm a director of the Foundation of Free Humans. We started noticing that the people were not just entering through Puerta Pachula, but they were stuck in Mexico as well, in Mexico City. And Biden established the Title 42 in October and returned about 6,000 Venezuelans in less than 2 months to Mexico, and that's where the camps began. There have been at least 5 camps, 5 or 6 camps that people in on the streets, really. And there was a dynamic where people donated to the already established organizations, especially the hostels and organizations that were already registered. But these organizations did not have people in on the streets. And all the help was going to these organizations, and the camps were not receiving that aid. At that time, I decided that our work had to be devoted to those that were more excluded. So we have done more than 10,000. We have given more than assistance to more than 10,000 people. What we do is we help with basic needs, that is access to food, water, personal hygiene articles, and channeling toward health centers, medication accompaniment through shelters, blankets, warm clothes, very basic things to mitigate the risk that these people might fall sick. Farida, excuse me. I have some pictures here that I'm going to share so you can also breathe a moment and you can tell us what these pictures are. Very spontaneously. Let's see if I can manage to do this quickly. Let's see if we can do this. It would be great because seeing it speaks more. And if I say it, it just kind of sounds simple. I will do this.
Ok, fatto. Adelante. Espera que lo de marchi. Así.
Sí. Nosotros principalmente
this is, we have no financing as such. We work with our own resources. We are 4 on the board. It's Tobar family, myself, with our own resources, and with the networks of the Venezuelan community in Mexico and part of the Colombian community as well. So in 2015, we founded this foundation, and then 2017, the Foundation of Venezuelans. So we established a network. Even if the other organizations have their own activities, obviously we rely on them. These are support networks. This food, this is the camp of Soledad that was already violently dismantled. It was attacked precisely when we were in Brazil. That camp was attacked. This camp was completely vacated. And this is the only one that survives, the one in Vallejo. And the one at the terminal, the smaller one you see, that one was vacated by the government of Mexico City. So that's the delivery of stuffed toys. In December, we gave the children some stuffed toys. That the stuffed toys has a reason to be. There was a survey done through migrant children. We asked them what they wanted, and they said that among the things, in addition to bed and a room to study, they wanted to have nature around them, animals and plants. So the stuffed toys the stuffed animals we gave them represents the animals. The clothing is donated by the Venezuelan community in Mexico. Thank you, Gaia. I think that those pictures illustrate much more than what I wanted to say. To conclude, I'd like to speak of the challenges that we are now facing, because the situation is the same as you saw. They are on the streets, but additionally, in Mexico, is like collapsing. We have many people who go to the first appointment and they stay out on a limb, and they spend 6 months without knowing what's happening, without receiving a message. And this means that these people have no work permit and no documents, no immigration. They can be taken away at any time. Every day that goes by, there's a greater sense of vulnerability, of emergency, and the refugee system in Mexico is collapsing. Another thing is that the National Institute of Migration is not giving the temporary visitor cards because of humanitarian reasons. Even though you've been processed as a refugee, they don't do that anymore. And the only way we've been achieving that is through some lawyers. So a person who's sleeping on the street, to find an attorney that may help them is quite difficult. So very few people have access to this, and that worsens the situation. It's like a spiral of exclusion, and it's intentional on the part of the Mexican government. So what is there? There's medical assistance in Mexico City that is free, and it is being offered to the people. But there are some rejections because of discrimination, but in general, the system accepts them. We have no difficulty with that right now because we have a good coordination with them. There are 2 government hostels, but the services are very scarce, so we have to go and help the people who are in the government hostels. The government keeps them there, but it doesn't give them medications or hygiene articles. So even if it's a government hostel, we offer some help. And then there's the politicization of the problem. The government of Mexico City argues that this is a political conspiration against them. It's a conspiracy, a political conspiracy. The fact that there are shelters to protect the migrants, and they are mixing the issue of the camps that exist since 2023 with the legal reform they did. So the courts challenge and question the things, and the government says that this is a political attack. They are truly... Sorry, Farida? They're using some arguments. So, in general, this is the situation, and the risk for the people who are submitted. Some people are already walking through the jungle, returning, going back. There's a father with 2 children, and just as they do not resist.
Gracias a ti, Farida.
Thank
Siempre
you.
un
Thank you,
placer
Farida.
escucharte
It's always a pleasure to listen
escuchar tu
to you,
experiencia y
to
tu
listen to your
lucha que se mueve a través de
experience,
la fe.
and to listen to your struggle moving through faith.
Si somos disciplinadas y
If we
disciplinados,
are
vamos a
disciplined,
dar
we're
2
going
minutitos para
to
hacer
take a
preguntas a
couple
Farida
of minutes to
porque si no,
ask
no
Farida some
podemos seguir
questions.
adelante, ¿no?
Otherwise,
¿Hay
we cannot
alguien que
move
quiera
forward.
preguntar
Is
algo a
there
Farida?
anyone who wishes to ask Farida a question?
Te están ingresando en la chat, Farida.
They
Yo
are
tengo una
thanking
pregunta,
you
te la
through
voy a
the
dar yo la
messages. I
primera y
do
después
have
vamos a
a
ver lo demás,
question. I
¿no?
will voice it first and then
Siempre en
we'll see about the
síntesis,
rest.
¿cuánto es
In
tu
summary,
percepción en este
what is
momento
your
en
perception
tu
at
piel,
this
sobre tu
time
propia piel,
on your
de
own
ser
skin
una, ¿cómo se dice? Tengo que
of
ser
being
un respaldo, una excusa, ¿no?
an
Del
excuse
gobierno
that
para
it
no
is
respetar los
an
derechos
excuse of the
humanos. ¿Cómo,
government to not
cómo
respect
sientes tú
human rights.
en tu piel,
How do
¿no?
you feel this
Este
on
peso,
your
¿te lo hacen
skin? How do
pensar?
you
¿Te lo
feel
hacen
this
ver?
weight? Do they show it,
No,
show you? Do
no
they?
entendí la pregunta. Am, que si el gobierno considera que,
¿Lo
que
hicieron?
I'm sorry?
considera que no, o sea,
The
no aprecia mi
government
trabajo.
Sí, que no
does
le
not
gusta y cuando te lo hace
appreciate
ver, te lo hace sentir
my
y
work
tú,
right. Do they
tú como
express this to you?
migrante
Do
eres
you feel this? And you,
una excusa
as a
más para el gobierno
migrant,
para
are
no
you an
seguir
extra
con el
excuse
respeto de la ley,
for the
para
government to
seguir
not
con
observe the law, for
todo lo
example?
que están haciendo?
Sí, de hecho,
In fact,
el gobierno de Ciudad de
initially, the
México
government of Mexico
mostró una
City
apertura a conversar,
showed some
pero luego
opening
cuando
to
del
speak, but
trabajo
then
le apoyaba
when they saw
a violentar a las personas, a vulnerar a las personas,
that
pues
they had
ya
no support, then
incluso nos enviaron un abogado a
they
investigarlo
sent us
y
an attorney to kind of
también
threaten
me
us, to
grabaron,
intimidate
me
us, and they
han
also recorded me.
identificado con el uniforme del
And there
gobierno
was
y
a
grabando,
man
fotografiando.
identified with the
Yo les
government
pregunté
uniform, but I asked
por qué me estaba grabando, que si
why I was
quitara el
being
registro.
recorded to identify himself. He didn't want
Hay una
to.
queja en la Comisión
So there's a
de la Ciudad de México
complaint at
esta
the
situación,
Human Rights
porque
Commission in Mexico
sí me
City because of this
sentí
situation, because I did
amenazada
feel
y
threatened,
intimidada por estas acciones.
intimidated
Además
by
que yo
these
soy refugia
actions.
política y
In
el gobierno de la Ciudad de
addition,
México
I am persecuted politically, and
hay cientos solicitantes de
the
refugio y yo
ambassador of
misma soy
Venezuela came
activista,
to the
soy
camp.
refugiada política,
I,
entonces ellos
as
son
an
agentes
activist,
migratorios.
I'm
Entonces,
politically
creo que
persecuted,
la
so
actitud
they
del
are
gobierno ahorita
persecutors.
no es
I think that the
amistosa.
attitude of the government is no longer friendly with us. Thank you.
María.
Maria. Thank you, Farida. Your testimony is very moving. I thank you so much. I thank you for your commitment, and I'd like to know whether in those support networks that you were mentioning, how do you feel? Do you feel the men and women of faith? Was the church there? Is there somehow, can you help us reflect as Christians in order to support this type of work? Thank you.
Sí, totalmente.
Yes.
Aquí hay algunas
There are some organizations, the Scalabrini Fathers, the Juan Luis and the Scalabrini sisters, and all their teams were always in touch. They've been helping us, so they have hostels. I help with people on the street when there's a possibility. They welcome people that I support. And in addition, I think it is important to have this coordination. The humanitarian help has been coordinated. We've offered help to some hostels of the Catholic Church, but sometimes they've had sufficient aid, and they tell me if there are people on the streets. So that coordination with the church institutions has been wonderful. And I also want to mention, I feel there's an important presence, and these are not Catholics as us, but they're Christian. There are Christian churches who go to the camps, and I think that has affected the resistance of the personnel.
Gloria Hilda, adelante. El micrófono, hermanita, está.
Sí, ya.
Ya, listo.
Gracias. Agradezco mucho.
I'm very thankful for that testimony. I feel that this is a prophetic voice from a migrant, and I think that's what we want. We want them to feel protagonists. I think that when you've been facing this, when you've lived these conditions, you understand those who are facing them. But my question goes in this direction. I've been working here with a foundation in Bogota with migrant families, and I feel that very much my own. The difficulty to obtain, for example, work permit, it was very difficult, especially for women. And some attention is being given to the children, the adolescents, but for the adults, it is more difficult, and that permit is necessary. There in Mexico, how is that situation developing with adults and the children?
Gracias. Bueno, con respecto al permiso de trabajo,
Well, with
evidentemente no nos
regards
están dando.
to the work permit, of course, they're not giving it. It's a very difficult.
Pues consiguen trabajos informales, precarios.
They
Les pagan muy poco.
manage some informal temporary jobs, and oftentimes they work all week.
Los explotan.
So they exploit them, taking advantage of their situation. One of the things that I believe affected that is the single mothers. There are very many mothers who are alone. When they want to look for a job, they do not allow to keep their children. So they are more vulnerable than the others because they have no one to leave their kids with. Some leave their kids with neighbors in the camp, but that's risky for the children. So the single mothers are those facing more difficulties. There are some single fathers, but they are few. Most of them are mothers. That is what is being done in order to register the kids to the school. They are allowing that. You have to struggle a little, but they are allowing, but they cannot graduate because they have no documents, no papers. So they do attend, they learn, but they cannot formally graduate until they have documents. They have papers. That's what's happening. And with the children who are being born, 15 days ago, a baby was born in the camps. We do have issues to get their certificate of birth certificates. So there's less help about that. In general terms, with regards to work, there's precarious work, and oftentimes they are deceived, they're not paid. Thank you so much, Farida. Can we move forward, Maria?
Gracias. Gracias,
Thank
Gaia. Creo que
you. Thank you,
veníamos trabajando un
Gaia.
poco, la verdad.
I think we're coming
Ahora
to some group work.
tendría
I would
algunos slides
now
a compartir.
have a
¿A qué
few
horas vamos a
slides to
acabar?
share.
Dame el
At
horario.
what time should we be done?
Muy
At
bien, entonces 2
4:30.
minutitos, un
Okay, so a couple of
para hacer el
minutes
punto sobre la crisis climática y la
to
migración,
conclude on the
porque
climate
también ese es el
crisis and
punto.
migration.
Farida,
This is a
grazie, te
focus.
lo
So,
voy a decir en
Farida,
italiano.
thank
Muchísimas
you.
gracias.
And I'll tell you in Italian, thank you so
Vamos
much.
un momentito a compartir.
Now let's share.
Una parte importante.
One important point is the idea of universal family. The universal family can only be real if we again define the value of individual autonomy within the logic of the Almighty, embracing a sensitivity for the world that surrounds us. When we take this step, we can clearly recognize our dignity as human beings and experience communion based on the respect for fundamental values that unite us. We are going to share these slides that we've presented with you so that you might continue reflecting. I had already presented a summary, but the group work is more important. The summary was about what is happening at the international level. As I said, I am the liaison person for Vivat International. Faith and the faith reflection and politics, all of that is very important for us as a foundation and for your congregation. So, in a few words, we can say that since from 1992 until now, because now we'll have the last COP, we have not made progress, rather we've seen failures on during these meetings of international governments about climate. We started in Kyoto, but the United States did not ratify this agreement. We continued with Copenhagen. I was young and it happened in Copenhagen. The situation there was very challenging. Nobody believed that the states could get together to have a common point about the climate situation, and that's what happened. We came to Paris, and in Paris, they established an ideal level because at this time, the planet is at 1.2 of heating, and the maximum level that was shared in Paris was 1.5. So we are very close to this maximum level. In Glasgow, there was a great challenge because everything they had thought about, everything that had been shared in Paris, they realized in Glasgow that there was no control tool nor a date. It was just a discussion, a conversation in the air. Sharm el Sheikh was like an enlightening moment because everybody started saying that nations could realize because they began to think about a fund, and this fund was supposed to be destined to all the climatic migrants, or at least the governments that that needed this because of the climate crisis. But they did not define how much or when this fund could be given. So everything stayed on paper. And we're going to then we come to COP28 in Dubai. Once again, there was limited progress. We officially recognize the need to abandon fossil fuels, but nobody said how. And now we have COP30. COP30 before January 21st, when Trump came to power, we thought it was like an enlightening moment, an important moment in history, for the history of the world. But based on what we are seeing, I don't think that we're going to reach any agreement. So, conclusions. The climate crisis, and this is very important, requires shared decisions in solidarity. Pope Francis speaks of multilateralism, and the multilateralism is a government model that promotes cooperation among the states as we seek common solutions for the challenges that affect us all, overcoming the logics of unilateral powers. When it is authentic, the multilateral policy allows some lasting agreements. For Pope Francis, that system needs to be deeply rephrased. It is not enough to make small adjustments. It has to be transformed in order to be truly at the service of people and the planet. Now we could go into our groups. I thank you for your attention. And here with Marcia and Maria, we thought of some questions that each group might choose. In every group, you can choose up to 2 questions and respond to them freely. The group methodology is very simple. There are 2 rounds and no more. Of course, you're from the same family, but the first round is a 1-minute introduction within your group. The second round is to answer the questions. Every group needs someone to take notes who can then share in plenary their group's opinion very briefly. This doesn't mean it is the person's opinion, rather 2 or 3 lines that will be written, shared in the group and read in plenary. Let's see if we can achieve that. If we cannot, those questions and answers may help you with tomorrow's work. Thank you. So we take a maximum of 15 minutes in the groups to come back here and share and do it in a prayerful manner. We will all be taken to our groups automatically to work in our language, and that's going to make it easier.
We also said that we need to be active about the problems that we see. To take care of life also means to accompany migrants towards fertile areas, and to take care of life means to feel responsible together for the other. We have to make an effort to be active about questions of integral ecology. remembering the themes that we talked about in the two past days. This is the reflections we heard in our
Thank you.
group.
Quickly, Anna and Irene, and then we conclude.
Su micrófono, hermana, por favor.
Bueno, pues nuestro grupo, que ha sido un grupo muy rico, que no me voy a parar
Our group was very enriching. I'm not going to introduce them, but this was a gift. There were three things that we saw which were important in working with migration, especially after listening. The first thing is that the protagonists in our accompaniment have to be migrants. They are those who have to look for solutions. They have to share the little they have. They have to be the protagonists because they have great richness. And our mission is to strengthen everything they have, accompany and include in our lives, to see it not as a threat or challenge, but as a richness. The second point is that our mission as educators, the presence of migrants in those centers is a great richness. We live thanks to them, and what they contribute is a culture that is much more spiritual and deep than what we have. Therefore, that is the challenge. And the third element that we saw as very important is to never work alone. The importance of the networks to enrich each other, not believe that we're the best, but know that the little we have has to be given. That was our conversation. That was very enriching. Thank you. Sister Irene. Sister Irene.
Su micrófono, soy Irene.
Your microphone, Sister Irene, please.
I was in a group of 6 people. I don't know if we understood the question, but we asked questions and tried to answer. The first question was to try and clarify the question between migrant and refugee, because it may be confusing. We thought migrant is someone who chooses to move somewhere that feels better than the country of origin, and this is a choice to, for example, to study or work. This is how we define migrants, whereas refugee are people who suffer in their country, so they have to move. It's not their will to leave, but it's the situation. And there can be refugees in their own country or in another country, and if they go abroad, they need to be recognized. And but if the host country does not accept the refugee, they will have to go back. So it's a political question when we talk about migrants or refugees. And the second question was about the silence of governments. There is a silence from the government and from the people sometimes. And we found examples of countries, for example, Gaza and Israel. The population live a difficult situation, but a tragic situation, but the government seemed to be absent. And this was, we were wondering at this question. And so we were sharing, for example, in Congo, where we are, people leave the villages and they go to the city. So people are too many and they suffer because they live in poverty, in difficult situation.
Selon leurs moyens, parce qu'elles ne peuvent pas satisfaire tout le monde. Donc, c'était ça, les deux questions que nous nous sommes posées. Et la deuxième
and these were the questions that we asked and that we tried to answer.
Thank you, Sister Irene. Thank you all for your contribution. Mathilde, if you can please conclude. Your microphone, Mathilde.
Merci. Je pense avec tous ces partages, tous ces apports.
Thank you.
Il y a de quoi remettre tout cela
we
entre les mains du Seigneur avant de nous
we can put all this in the hands of the Lord and get ready for tomorrow. We turn ourselves towards our Mother Mary, the protector who protects migrants and refugees. We will listen to the Holy Mary, and with the microphone switched off, we can pray in silence by ourselves, thinking about the situations that we encounter. And thank you very much, everyone.